Hey, this is Scott from Merde, and today we're going to talk about the motion picture experience, Color of Night. Two lovers, one killer. Now this video cast is going to contain much discussion of issues related to male genitalia, so if you have kids around or you're listening at work, you might want to put your headphones on. So a considerate reader of my website wrote me to recommend this movie, saying it's the mommy dearest of the 90s. Okay, so here's the backstory. Richard Rush started out making biker-sploitation films, and then made Freebie and the Bean, and then made the super artsy and acclaimed post-modern Hollywood satire The Stuntman, for which he was nominated for an Academy Award. 14 years then passed before he made another film, and this is that film. While the credits play, we start to notice that we have a rather incredible B-level cast, including Leslie Ann Warren, Scott Bakula, Brad Dourif, Ruben Blades, Lance Heinrichsen, Eric LaSalle, and Kathleen Willahoy. Kathleen is up first as we see her raging around her apartment looking for something in a craze, and then she starts smearing lipstick all over her mouth. She takes a gun out of her desk drawer, puts it in her mouth, and then starts fellatiating the gun. And ladies and gentlemen, we are only 2 minutes into Color of Night. Abruptly, she's in an office with Bruce Willis, younger and hotter, but with considerably less acting ability, and they're having therapy. He has some harsh criticism for her, which she doesn't take too well, as she runs and leaps out of his giant arched window, which everyone in movies in Manhattan seemed to have in the 90s. And check out the amazing glass street they've constructed so we can look up from beneath the body. Later, Bruce is telling his mentor how when he looked down at the green dress and the red blood, he went colorblind. To deny red is to deny emotion, his therapist says. So what does it mean if you deny teal? Anyway, so Bruce is going to go out to LA to catch some rays, chill for a while, and check where his mental's at. He arrives and goes straight to the office of his fellow therapist and best friend, Bob, played by Scott Bakula, who has a therapy group readying in the next office. This group soon proves to be quite a cast of characters. You have Leslie Ann Warren as Sandra, a sexual compulsive who first appears wearing this insane white dress with emerald green top and red lower trim. I bet she got that at the Christmas tree store. There's also Kevin J. O'Connor as Snyder's Casey, and troubled teen Richie, who looks like the lead character in The Dark Crystal.
What?
Richie is said to have a gender awareness problem, so he can't tell men from women, and he also has a terrible stutter, which leads him to fly across the room and physically attack Casey when made fun of. Fuck you! You know, and the therapy group hasn't even started yet. These are the introductions. So after the group breaks up, Bruce learns about Bob's giant bestseller called Way to Go, and they pile into Bob's hot convertible, because these are hot psychologists. Yeah. Then they go back to Bob's place, where Bruce can't believe how rich Bob is and what a giant house he has, and it's like, have you guys met before?
Way to go, must have gone really well.
So the next day, our hot psychologist hard buddies decide to go out for a vigorous bike ride. They're on their way out, and there's some discussion meant to lead us to believe that they have some sort of competitive rivalry, and then Bob says,
why don't we just drop our pants and see who's got the bigger dick, then we can go back and have a nice civilized breakfast.
And I'm like, yes, why don't you? At last, a voice for nonviolence. You know, just imagine how many world conflicts might be peacefully resolved if guys would just take their cocks out. I'm prepared to offer my services at these penile length summits at great personal sacrifice and vow to check and recheck to the last millimeter if need be. Before a civilized breakfast is a great time to take your cock out, or really before any major meal or snack. You can do it at home right now. These progressive guys show that when two guys take their cocks out, everyone can be big winners. So come on, fellas, take your cocks out. Anyway, so they go out bike riding, and Bob says he's been getting death threats, which he thinks emanates from someone in the group. But let's get back to cocks. When they arrive back at the house, we see that Bob's going to get a jump on this whole cock measuring stuff and invite the public in on his fun, as he's wearing these black spandex shorts with a white dust carefully coating his clearly defined and visible cock.
You know, you lose a lot more gracefully.
Like, there's the head. To better understand this phenomenon, let's go to the cock cam.
You know, you lose a lot more gracefully.
Okay, so now try to clear your head of all that dusty bacula cock and let's proceed. So Bob is working late one night at the office when... what's that noise? He gets around the corner and suddenly there's this figure in an oversized black rubber hoodie who leaps at him and stabs him with this kind of brass knuckle knife thing. The whole murder sequence is incredibly over the top and just like... So then Bruce is brought into the police station, which looks like no other police station in existence, with these super high arched windows and white window panes, and it's like, so do you rent this out for wedding receptions on the weekends?
Something about sessions on Mondays.
He prods Bruce to take over leadership of Bob's group, which Bruce tells us is common practice in psychology, and yeah, you know, I mean, I think we can really believe that. So the next day Bruce is driving along screaming at somebody on the telephone when suddenly Jane March rear ends him.
No, you don't understand.
Jane March played the young girl in the film The Lover, where her odd looks and inability to act kind of worked with the character. Here she comes off like a chimpanzee that's been trained to mimic human speech.
Poor old brain can't remember its own phone number.
There's just something kind of odd about her. She's not really pretty, she's not really sexy, and please, don't get too close lest you rend yourself on her razor-sharp teeth. Yes, Jane just has a really distinctive set of teeth that kind of look like they could take a chunk out of your neck with one swift jab. Not exactly a blowjob mouth. Then he goes back to Bob's house where he's staying, and there's something weird about the place. Turns out it's flooded with water. He creeps around with a knife until he finds there's a hose on outside that's spurting water into the house. Don't you just hate those hoses that come on all by themselves and arrange themselves so they're shooting water into the house? God! You know, we can put a man on the moon, but apparently nothing can be done about these rogue hoses. So Bruce is outside drying the dish towels or whatever when suddenly Rose shows up. That's Jane March. He says, "I'm all wet," and she says, "You too?" Then she suggests that they go out to dinner, which they do. Now Richard Russ has been showing us that he's an artsy director, and he just loves him some split diopter shots. Those are the one where there's something in front and there's something in way back, but they're both in focus. And there's a notable one here where Bruce is in front and Rose is reflected in the mirror, only it looks like she's sitting behind him and talking to the back of his head. Soon after this, Bruce gets the whole rattlesnake in the mailbox treatment, which proves not really to be related to anything else in the film, and soon after Rose shows up during the afternoon and they have their big hot sex scene in the pool. So I'm going to cut it off here because it just kind of continues in this vein, but there's something very important you must understand, and that everything we have talked about up till now is only the first half of the movie. Coming up later on, you've also got some crank calls from someone who speaks in a duck voice.
Hey, puke face!
Crank calls from someone in a duck voice, another sure sign of classic cinema. So we're going to skip right to the ending, and I'm going to reveal the shocking secret. So if you don't want to know, well, I guess we'll see you later then. So right at the end, we discover that socially stunted, asexual young teen boy Richie is actually Rose. Dun, dun! This means that poor Jane March, who can barely act as one person, is forced to assume the role of this troubled teenage boy with a speech impediment and several other roles throughout the film. Anyway, so there's some arbitrary climax on the de rigueur high precipice. Bruce gets his color vision back. He and Rose are going to live happily ever after, although she's obviously a psychopathic fuck-up, and that's the end. So while this may not quite be the mommy dearest of the 90s, it is just a stupefying collection of the most disparate and bizarre, over-the-top elements, all bound together with a sheen of pretentious artsiness. You should gather a bunch of friends and all get super drunk, and you've got a great evening right there. Okay, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Check out some other videos and podcasts, and in the meantime, take your cock out.